Jackie from Lessons by the Lake. Today I want to talk to you about Reading Centers management. I have 6 tips I want to share with you to help make your reading centers flow smoothly and you be able to focus on your guided reading group while everything else is pretty much running itself. So reading centers can often feel like you're juggling a million things at a time, and it's hard and it's chaotic, but we want to simplify that. So it's really important to establish good routines and expectations at the beginning of the year so students know what to expect at every center. They know what they need to do, they know how to act, how to get their supplies, so all of that can run itself. So I'm going to put a blog post to how to establish those routines and expectations in the description if you want to head over there and read about how to do that. All right, now on to my tips I'm going to share with you. So the first one is the schedule. It's really important to have the schedule posted somewhere in your room. So I put it up on my smart board. You can have it printed out and hung up on the board, but I do the schedule for every day. So it will show Monday's centers, and the students can see for each of their groups what their 2 centers are. I've also done some years that I only have that one center up at a time. Sometimes my students need to see ahead and remember what their second center is. Sometimes they just need to focus on what they need to be doing right now. So whichever format works best for you, you can switch slides in between the 2 centers or flip a paper over if you have it printed out. So however it works best for your students to show both centers for the day or just one center. So think about what works best. Also, so I have the groups listed with what their activities are, and sometimes it's helpful to have the kids' names written up there for which group they're in. Sometimes I switch kids throughout the year depending on the unit and if their reading level is changing. Sometimes they have trouble remembering which group they're supposed to be in. So some classes have that need that having their names up on the board just gives them a quick reminder of which group they're in, and they see exactly, there's my name, here's where I need to go. So that's the first thing I think is really important, to have the schedule where they can see it and they know what's expected of them. All right, number 2, communicating expectations. So that's what I was talking about a little bit before about building those routines. So I teach the routines with a responsive classroom strategy called interactive modeling. So that's when you really break down each little step of what you expect of them. So it's practicing walking from your desk to the area where the supplies are. It's showing what it looks like while you're working, and the students are acting it out and going through the motions, and then you're discussing it. Talking about what did you notice they did correctly? What could they have done better? You talk about what it sounds like, what it feels like, what it looks like, all those different things, so they're truly understanding what you expect of them. You also can practice the wrong way to do it so that they see that those things are not acceptable. I do that for each of the centers. And then throughout the room while we're practicing, I'm explaining to them that any center that requires materials and supplies, where they are, how to find them, how to keep them organized, how they're labeled. Like for example, my Focus Frog activities are always in this bin. And then within this bin, there's a folder for each group. Since it's differentiated, I want to make sure that they understand that when they go in here, they need to find their folder with their group name on it, and that's the activity that they need to take. And then we talk about where they need to turn in, or if they have crayons and glue, where are they going to find that for the activity. So it's important to show where all the supplies are and set those expectations for how to put them away appropriately and neatly and use the supplies the right way. So another little tip I have is that I put the materials in different areas of the room, or else I find my first year I made a whole reading center table and put everything on there so it would all be in one spot. And then when I said it was time to switch, I had 15 kids going to that table to try and get their materials. That didn't work out so well. So I learned that they need to be in different areas of the room so that they're walking and going to different places and they're not all crowding in one spot trying to get what they need. So that's something that's very helpful when thinking about the location of where you're going to put your materials and establishing those expectations. These are free on my blog. I'll put the link below if you want my labels for my centers, and I'll put the link that explains all my different centers and what they are also. All right, so my third tip is behavior. So an important part of centers is for you to be able to work with your guided reading group. the rest of the class needs to be having appropriate behavior so that you're able to really focus on talking and working through the text with your small group. So you need to know your kids and know what works best for them. I've used Class Dojo before, and I'm able to give out points while I'm working with my group, and they can hear the sound going off, so they know that they're getting points as they're working. You have it up on the screen and they can see that they're getting points. I also walk around every 5 to 7 minutes, especially in the beginning, to make sure that they feel that I'm still watching them, that I'm not just back in the corner with my group and not paying attention to them, that they see my proximity and they feel me walking around. So I like to make sure I do that like in the middle of my group at least one time for each group. And then while I'm doing that, I'm able to reinforce or redirect the behavior as needed. Of course, other times I'll stop if there's a problem, but you really need to work with your students to make sure that they know that this is a special time and this needs to be their best behavior. So something else that helps with behavior is students always have a lot of questions and they need help and they want help right away. So the first 10 to 15 minutes of our reading block, we do shared reading before centers. And at the end of that shared reading, I see students that showed they are paying attention and were participating well and showing their best behavior, and I give them a necklace. So I do 2 to 3 students a day. They get a necklace to be a helper. So we have the ask 3 before me policy with our centers, that they need to talk to 3 other students, they ask their questions, and if those people can't solve it, then they come to me. So, but when we do that, they ask the students who have the necklaces. So not only am I able to recognize students for showing good behavior at the beginning of class, and I'm giving them leadership opportunity, but I'm also picking students that I know will be able to answer the questions. Like if I know it's a tough technology day, I want to make sure I'm picking students that I know are able to help with some of those technology issues. Okay. Tip number 4 is voice level. It kind of goes along with behavior, because that's usually the biggest problem during centers, is that students are getting loud in their partners or in their groups, and you're having trouble hearing your group. So what I use for voice level is that we practice it and we model it a lot. We talk about our number level, and we talk about being respectful of each other's time with the teacher and how they feel when they're with the teacher and they can't hear each other. But my special tool that I use is I say waterfall, and students go shh. It's a call and response, but that reminds them to bring their voice level down. It actually gives them that moment to take a deep breath and calm down and pause, and their volume immediately goes down, if not stops completely. And it's very easy for me while I'm working with my group to look up and just say waterfall. So I'm not stopping to tell them to be quiet. I'm not calling out a specific student. I'm just talking to the whole room saying that we need to bring the volume down. So I love that. So just waterfall, and they respond shh. It's my absolute favorite classroom management tool ever. So tip number 5 is movement. So I like to minimize students having to move around the room during centers because it's distracting to each other. We're not really sure what they're doing, why they're out of their seat. So they know they need to get all their supplies at once. I help them do this by putting all the supplies they need in a bag or putting it in one spot. And then they know once they get back to their spot they're working at, they can't get up. There's also bathroom rules that they're only allowed to go to the bathroom during certain centers. Even with some classes, I do a bathroom break before reading, and then they can't go during reading unless it's an absolute emergency. We also use a lot of nonverbal signals, that we use hand signals for them to ask if they need to go to the bathroom, get a tissue, sharpen their pencil. So I'm able to just nod my head from my guided reading group and give them their response. Because we don't want students spending 10 minutes walking to the tissue box and dawdling around the room, because we've all had students that do that, you know what I mean, that just walk around and spend time looking at things because they don't want to do their work. So I really try and make sure that they're staying in their seat and they are doing as little movement around the room as possible. All right, number 6, smooth transitions. This is a very difficult thing in centers. You have those amazing 15 minutes for your first center, everyone did a great job, but now how do you get them to the second 15 minutes? So I give a 2-minute warning, and certain stations that have a lot of materials, they know that when they hear that 2-minute warning, they need to clean up. They need to put everything back, and then they need to sit in their seat and show me that they're ready to switch. We have a lot of practice of this. It takes a long time. When you're getting good, our transitions are down to 20, 30 seconds. the beginning of the year when we're practicing, it's more like 5 minutes. So we talk a lot about moving safely around the room, making sure you look at the board and you see where you're going next, know what your expectations are, where you're going next, and just practicing that moment when I say switch, how it's not chaos of them all running different places, that it's not a rush to get to your next station, that you need to calmly take your time and walk to your next reading center, and where you should walk so that you're not all bumping into each other. And it takes a lot of practice, but students can get it. Give them that time, take that time, do that interactive modeling for how you should walk and what you should be doing during transition times, and how you don't stop and chat with your friends, or you don't stop and sharpen your pencil, that's not the time for that. That the transition time is just to get where you need to go to the next station. So putting in the time in the beginning of the year to really make sure that you are creating those smooth transitions will greatly give you more time through the rest of the year. It'll give it back to you. So take that time in the beginning of the year, set those routines and expectations. I can't stress that enough. It feels like a very long process and very slow to teach it to them and to practice, to build up that stamina. But once reading centers are going, they go and they run themselves and they are amazing. So trust me, take that time when you can do it and teach those routines. So those are my top 6 tips. I'll put a link to my blog that goes over the same tips if you want to read some more about them and see some pictures of what I do. But if you have any questions and I can help you get started or do anything to help with your classroom, please let me know. I'm happy to talk to you about it. And thank you for stopping by.